The stars had always been quiet places for the Valorians. Their ships moved through the dark, empty spaces between worlds like whispers, careful and gentle. They had explored the galaxy for more than 10,000 years, and in all that time they had learned one simple truth. The universe was beautiful, but it was also dangerous. The wise species learned to avoid danger. The foolish ones died. Senior Surveyor Kethril stood at the center of the bridge aboard the scientific vessel Gentle Whisper. His tall, thin body glowed with soft blue light as he studied the sensor readings on the main display. Around him, his crew of 12 worked at their stations. Their bioluminescent skin pulsed with calm greens and yellows. Everything was normal. Everything was peaceful. They had been exploring this region of space for nearly 60 cycles now. It was an uncharted area far from the busy trade routes of the galactic Concordat. No other species had claimed these stars. The Gentle Whisper was alone out here in the dark, and that was exactly how Kethril preferred it. "Senior Surveyor," said Navigator Yethra from her station. Her skin flickered with pale orange, a sign of mild concern. "I am detecting something unusual." Kethril turned toward her. "What is it?" "A vessel. Unknown configuration. It is holding position near the 4th planet of this system. A vessel. Out here in unclaimed space. That was strange, but not impossible. Perhaps another Concordat exploration ship had wandered into this region. Perhaps it was a lost trader who had jumped off course. There were many possibilities. "Show me," said Kethril. The main display changed. It showed a section of space near a large gas giant planet. There, floating against the orange and brown clouds of the giant, was a ship. It was dark and angular. Its hull was covered in thick plates of metal. It looked heavy and solid in a way that Valorian ships never did. Kethril felt the first small touch of unease in his chest. He had seen many ships in his 300 years of service. Valorian vessels were smooth and elegant. Thessian ships were round and organic. Kethvari traders flew in long needle shapes. But this ship looked like none of those things. It looked like a weapon. "Run identification protocols," Kethril ordered. "Already running, Senior Surveyor. No match in the Concordat database. No match." That meant this was either a very old design that had been forgotten, or it was something new. Something from a species that the Concordat had never met before. "Begin detailed scanning," said Kethril. "I want to know everything about that vessel." The crew worked in silence for several minutes. Data flowed across their screens. Numbers and readings and measurements filled the displays, and as the information built up, Kethril felt his unease grow into something stronger. Something close to fear. "Senior Surveyor," said Science Officer Methkal. His voice was unusually quiet. "These readings cannot be correct." "Explain." "The hull composition. It is a metal alloy, but the density is extreme. Our sensors indicate armor plating rated for direct micrometeorite impact at high velocity. The outer layer also contains lead composite shielding. Heavy lead composite. The kind used for operations near active stars." Kethril's skin flickered with gray. Lead shielding of that density was only used in the most dangerous environments in the galaxy. No scientific vessel would need such protection. Only military assault craft carried armor like that, and even then only the most specialized units. "What else?" Kethril asked. "The internal atmosphere." Mithkal paused. His hands trembled slightly over his controls. "Oxygen content at 21%, nitrogen at 78%, trace amounts of argon, carbon dioxide, and water vapor. Pressure reading at approximately 1 standard unit." The bridge went silent. Every member of the crew turned to look at Methkal. Their skin colors shifted to shades of gray and dark blue. Fear. Deep fear. Oxygen at 21%. For the Valorians who breathed a gentle mixture of helium and neon, that number was almost unthinkable. Oxygen at such concentrations was not just dangerous, it was actively hostile to life. It corroded metal. It fed fires. It destroyed organic tissue with its aggressive chemical reactions. Any Valorian who breathed such an atmosphere would be dead within minutes. "That must be an error," said Navigator Yethra. "No crew could survive in such conditions." "I have checked the readings 3 times, said Methkal. "They are accurate." Kethril stared at the image of the strange vessel on his display. His mind was racing. A ship with heavy armor, extreme radiation shielding, an atmosphere of corrosive gas. What kind of creature could build such a thing? What kind of creature would need to? "Continue scanning," he ordered. His voice was steady, but his skin betrayed him. It had gone completely gray. Check for internal gravity readings. Methcal worked at his station. When he spoke again, his voice cracked slightly. Internal gravity is set to approximately 1.0 G standard. 1.0. Kethril closed his eyes. The Valorians had evolved on a gentle world with gravity of just 0.3 G standard. Their bodies were tall and thin because their bones did not need to support much weight. At 1.0 gravity, a Valorian could barely stand. Their bones would stress and fracture. Their internal organs would compress. Extended exposure would cause permanent damage and death. "Senior Surveyor," said Communications Officer Pethil. Her voice was barely a whisper. "The classification algorithms have completed their analysis, and the vessel matches the profile for a Class 3 Deathworld class construction." The words hung in the air. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Kethril felt as if the temperature on the bridge had dropped by 10 degrees. Class 3 Deathworld. In all his years of service, Kethril had never encountered anything connected to that classification. The Deathworlds were planets of nightmare, places where the environment itself was hostile to intelligent life, worlds of extreme gravity and temperature, worlds of toxic atmosphere and violent geology, worlds where survival was not a gift, but a constant, desperate struggle. The Concordat had studied such worlds from orbit. They had sent robotic probes to gather data, but no Concordat species had ever set foot on a Deathworld. The very idea was madness. Those planets killed everything that tried to live on them, and yet here was a ship, built to Deathworld specifications, built to survive conditions that would destroy any normal vessel and any normal crew. "Check for life signs," Kethril said. The words felt strange in his mouth. He already knew the answer would be impossible. Methcal ran the scan. His hands were shaking badly now. "Senior Surveyor, the bioscanners are detecting life signs aboard the vessel." "How many?" 128. All warm-blooded. All with internally regulated body temperatures near 310 Kelvin. All moving freely through the ship, without protective equipment. 128 living beings. Walking through corridors filled with corrosive oxygen. Standing upright in crushing gravity. Protected from cosmic radiation by nothing but their own flesh and blood. "That is not possible," said Yethra. "Nothing could survive those conditions without full hazard containment suits. Nothing could live like that." But the sensors did not lie. The sensors showed 128 life signs moving through that terrible ship, as easily as the Valorians moved through their own gentle vessel. Kethril made a decision. It was perhaps the most frightening decision of his long career, but it was also the only choice available to him. He was an explorer. His purpose was to discover and document the unknown. And this vessel was the most unknown thing he had ever found. "Open a communication channel," he ordered. Standard first contact protocols. Mathematical sequence followed by universal greeting patterns. "Senior Surveyor," said Pethil. "Are you certain? We do not know what kind of beings crew that ship. If they are hostile, we have no weapons, no defenses. I am aware of our situation, but we are representatives of the Galactic Concordat. Our mission is peaceful exploration and scientific discovery. If there is intelligent life aboard that vessel, then it is our duty to make contact." Pethil hesitated for a long moment. Then she turned to her console and began transmitting. The mathematical sequence went out first. Prime numbers, the universal language of intelligence. Then came the greeting patterns. Simple images showing two different beings meeting in peace. The bridge waited. The seconds stretched into minutes. Kethril watched the strange dark ship on his display and wondered what kind of creatures lived inside it. Were they warriors? Conquerors? Survivors of some terrible catastrophe that had hardened them against the universe itself? "Senior Surveyor," said Pethil. "We are receiving a response." The main display flickered. A new transmission appeared. It was also mathematical. Prime numbers, then simple geometric shapes, then something that made Kethril's hearts beat faster. An image of two different beings standing together. The same greeting that the Valorians had sent. "They are responding in kind," said Mithkal. "They are attempting communication. Can we establish a translation link?" "Attempting now. Their communication systems are different from ours, but the basic principles are similar. I am detecting audio and visual capability. If they agree, we could establish direct communication within a few minutes." Kethril nodded. "Do it." More signals passed between the two ships. Data packets filled with linguistic information, sound samples, image references. The translation algorithms on both sides worked to build bridges between two completely different languages, and then the main display changed again. A face appeared, or what Kethril assumed was a face. It was flat and round with two forward-facing eyes. The eyes were small and wet, and they moved constantly as if searching for threats. Below the eyes was a protruding structure with two openings, some kind of breathing apparatus. Below that was a horizontal slit lined with hard white structures, a mouth filled with teeth. The creature had hair growing from the top of its head, dark brown strands that moved slightly with some invisible air current. Its skin was a warm brown color, smooth and thick-looking, built for protection against the hostile environment it lived in. "Hello," said the creature. The translation system processed the word and converted it to Valorian. "We received your transmission. We are the crew of the ISV Magellan. We come in peace. My name is Elena Vasquez. I am the commander of this vessel, a female." The universal greeting had included basic biological information. This creature was female, a leader of her kind. Kethril stepped forward. His skin had steadied to a neutral blue. He would not show fear even if he felt it. "I am Senior Surveyor Kethril of the Valorian scientific vessel Gentle Whisper. We represent the Galactic Concordat. We also come in peace." The creature called Elena Vasquez made a strange movement with her mouth. The corners pulled upward and the white teeth became visible. For a terrible moment, Kethril thought it was a threat display, a show of weapons before an attack, but then he noticed that her eyes had changed too. They had become softer, warmer. "I am very happy to meet you, Kethril," said Elena Vasquez. "This is our first contact with an alien species. We have hoped for this moment for many years." First contact. Kethril absorbed this information. These creatures had never met another intelligent species before. They had been alone in the universe until this moment, and yet they had built a ship and sent it out into the dark between the stars. They had come looking for others even though they did not know if others existed. "We have many questions," said Kethril carefully. "Your vessel is unlike any we have encountered before. Its construction suggests survival requirements that exceed anything in our database. May I ask what species you are? What world you come from?" Elena Vasquez made that strange mouth movement again. "We are humans. We come from a planet called Earth. It is the third planet from our star in a system we call Sol. We have been traveling for about 18 of our months now. Humans, from a planet called Earth." Kethril had never heard either name before, but he had already guessed what kind of planet Earth must be, a world that produced creatures capable of surviving in oxygen and high gravity, a world that built ships with armor, meant for the most extreme environments in the galaxy. "Commander Vasquez," said Kethril, "I must ask a direct question. Please do not be offended. Is your homeworld classified as a Deathworld by your species?" Elena Vasquez looked confused for a moment. The translation systems processed her response. "I am not sure what you mean by Deathworld. Earth has many different environments. Some are harsh and some are gentle. We live on all of them, harsh and gentle." To this creature there was a difference. To her, Earth had variation. That meant the gentle places on her world were still harsh enough to produce beings like her, and the harsh places were worse. "I understand," said Kethril. He did not understand at all, but he knew this was not the time for difficult questions. "Commander Vasquez, would you and your crew be willing to meet with us in person? Our mission is peaceful scientific research. We would like to learn about your species and share information about our own." There was a pause. Elena Vasquez turned to speak with someone outside the view of the camera. Kethril could hear other voices speaking in the strange human language. Then she turned back. "We would like that very much, but there may be a problem. Our ships have different atmospheres and different gravity. How do we meet safely?" A practical question. Kethril was relieved that the humans had thought of this. It showed they were reasonable creatures capable of understanding differences between species. "We have environmental suits rated for extreme conditions," said Kethril. "We could meet in a neutral location, perhaps a docking collar with adjustable atmosphere. We can find a mixture that is survivable for both species." "That sounds good to me. We have spacesuits that can work in many different environments. We will match whatever conditions your people need." Spacesuits. Kethril wondered what kind of protection humans required for hazardous environments. If their normal living conditions were already at Deathworld levels, then their hazard suits must be truly terrifying pieces of equipment. "Excellent," said Kethril. "We will begin docking approach." Please transmit your preferred parameters and we will adjust accordingly. Understood. Magellan out. The transmission ended. The main display returned to showing the dark, angular shape of the human vessel. Kethriel stood very still and let his mind process everything he had learned. Humans. A species from a death world. A species that breathed poison and walked in crushing gravity. A species that had never met aliens before and yet had come into space anyway. Looking for others, hoping to find them. Senior Surveyor, said Mythkal quietly. What do we do now? Kethriel turned to face his crew. They were all watching him. Their skin colors showed fear and uncertainty. They were looking to him for guidance. We do our job, said Kethriel. We are explorers. We have found something new. Something unprecedented. Our duty is to learn and document and understand. We will meet these humans. We will study them. And we will report everything we discover to the Concordat. But they are from a death world, said Yethra. They could be dangerous. Their biology alone suggests predatory evolution. What if they are violent? It was a fair concern. The Concordat had always assumed that Deathworld species would be aggressive and hostile. The environments that created them were aggressive and hostile. It seemed logical that the creatures would reflect their origins. But Kethriel thought about the face he had just seen. Elena Vasquez. Her strange, pulling mouth movement that seemed to indicate positive emotions. Her words about hoping to meet others. Her practical concern for the safety of both crews. Perhaps they are dangerous, said Kethriel. Perhaps all the assumptions we have made about Deathworld species are correct, but we will not know until we meet them. And if we turn away now out of fear, then we will never know. We will have failed in our purpose. The crew was silent. Then slowly, one by one, their skin colors began to shift. Gray and dark blue gave way to lighter shades. Not quite calm, but no longer pure fear. Acceptance. Resolution. Prepare for docking approach, said Kethriel. And send a preliminary report to the nearest Concordat relay station. The Council should know what we have found. Whatever happens next, they should know that we found humans. The gentle whisper began to move toward the Magellan. Two ships from two different worlds approaching each other in the darkness between the stars. One built for gentle creatures who feared danger, one built for creatures who had never known anything else. Kethriel watched the human vessel grow larger on his display. Somewhere inside that armored hull, 128 beings were preparing to meet him. Beings who breathed fire and walked through crushing weight. Beings who had climbed out of hell and reached for the stars. He did not know what would happen when they met face to face. He did not know if these humans would prove to be friends or enemies. All he knew was that the universe had just become a much more interesting place, and for a scientist that was the greatest gift of all. The docking procedure took several hours. Both ships moved slowly and carefully through the empty space between them. Neither crew wanted to make sudden movements that might be seen as hostile. Trust was a fragile thing when two species had never met before. Commander Elena Vasquez stood in the main airlock of the Magellan and watched through the thick observation window as the alien vessel approached. The gentle whisper was beautiful in a way she had not expected. Its hull was smooth and curved like polished silver. It seemed to flow from one section to the next without hard edges or sharp corners. Compared to the heavy angular construction of the Magellan, it looked like a work of art. The Valorian vessel is requesting final docking parameters, said Lieutenant Chen over the intercom. They want to know what atmosphere mixture we can tolerate in the meeting chamber. Elena considered the question. The Valorians had already explained that they breathed a helium-neon mixture at low pressure. Humans could not survive in such an atmosphere, but they could wear suits. The question was what middle ground might exist. Tell them we can work in any atmosphere as long as we have our suits, Elena replied. We will match their needs. Our equipment can handle the difference. There was a pause. Then Chen spoke again. Commander, they seem confused. They are asking what level of hazard protection we will be wearing. They want to know if we need any special shielding or containment systems. Elena frowned. Tell them standard EVA suits. Nothing special. Another pause. This time it lasted much longer. When Chen came back, his voice sounded strange. Commander, they are asking to confirm. They want to know if our standard suits are rated for Class 3 hazard environments. They seem very concerned about our safety. Class 3 hazard. Elena did not know exactly what that meant in Valorian terms, but she could guess. The Valorians clearly expected humans to need extreme protection just to enter a shared space with them. They thought humans were fragile creatures who would die without heavy equipment. It was almost funny. The humans had been worried about the same thing in reverse. They had assumed the Valorians would need extensive life support just to survive near human conditions. Confirm that our suits are rated for vacuum exposure, extended EVA operations, and basic radiation protection, said Elena. That should be more than enough for a pressurized meeting chamber. The docking clamps engaged with a soft metallic sound. The two ships were now connected. A flexible tunnel extended between their airlocks, creating a sealed passage where both crews could meet. The atmosphere inside would be set to Valorian standards, since humans could adapt more easily with their suits. Elena checked her equipment one final time. Her EVA suit was the standard model used for spacewalks. It was white and flexible with a clear helmet that allowed full visibility. It had oxygen tanks on the back and temperature regulation built into the fabric. Nothing fancy, just basic survival equipment for working in space. She had chosen 3 crew members to accompany her. Dr. Samuel Okonkwo, the chief science officer, was essential for any first contact situation. His expertise in biology and chemistry would help them understand the Valorians. Lieutenant Commander James Park was her second in command and would provide tactical assessment if anything went wrong. And Specialist Maria Santos was there because she had insisted and because Elena trusted her instincts about people, even alien people. Ready? Elena asked her team. Ready, Commander. They replied together. Elena opened the inner airlock door and stepped into the connecting tunnel. The gravity was lower here. The Valorians had set it to 0.5 g as a compromise between their preferred 0.3 and human standard 1.0. It felt strange to Elena, like walking on the moon. Each step carried her further than expected. At the far end of the tunnel, a second airlock stood closed. Through its window, Elena could see movement. Tall, thin shapes glowing with soft light. The Valorians were waiting. She reached the airlock and stopped. Through the glass, she could now see them clearly. They were perhaps 2.5 meters tall, with bodies as thin as willow branches. Their skin was pale and translucent, and it produced its own light in soft, shifting colors. They had large, dark eyes that seemed to take up most of their faces. Their arms were long, with delicate fingers that looked like they might break if gripped too hard. They were beautiful. And they were clearly terrified. Elena could see it in the way their light flickered. Rapid pulses of gray and dark blue that seemed to indicate stress. Their movements were hesitant and careful. They stood far back from the airlock as if afraid to get too close. She understood suddenly what they must be seeing. 4 humans in suits approaching their vessel. 4 creatures from a world they classified as deadly. 4 beings whose normal environment would kill a Valorian in minutes. No wonder they were afraid. Elena raised her hand slowly. Palm open. A universal gesture of peaceful intent. Hello. I am Commander Elena Vasquez. May we enter? The translation systems had been working throughout the docking procedure. She heard her words converted to Valorian and broadcast through the tunnel speakers. A moment later, a response came back. You may enter, Commander Vasquez. I am Senior Surveyor Keithriel. We welcome you aboard the Gentle Whisper. The airlock opened. Elena stepped through first, followed by her team. The air in the Valorian section was thin and cold. She could feel it even through her suit. Her instruments showed an ambient temperature of only 10 degrees Celsius and pressure at less than half Earth normal. Keithriel stepped forward to meet her. Up close, he was even more impressive. His skin glowed with soft blue light that seemed to pulse with his breathing. His eyes were deep and dark and filled with an intelligence that transcended species boundaries. Thank you for agreeing to meet with us, Elena said. We have traveled very far and for a very long time hoping to find other intelligent life. Today our hope has been answered. Keithriel made a gesture that the translation system identified as acknowledgement. We are also honored by this meeting. The Galactic Concordat has explored space for more than 12,000 of your years. In all that time we have never encountered a species like yours. A species like ours? Elena tilted her head. What do you mean? Keithriel's skin flickered with colors Elena did not yet understand. Commander Vasquez, your ship, its construction. We have analyzed it carefully. The armor plating, the radiation shielding, the internal atmosphere, and gravity. These specifications match what we call a Class 3 Deathworld class vessel. There was that term again. Deathworld. Elena had heard it in their first conversation, and it had puzzled her then. I do not understand what that classification means. Could you explain? A Deathworld is a planet where the environment is actively hostile to intelligent life. Extreme gravity, extreme temperature variations, toxic or corrosive atmospheres, geological instability. dangerous native life forms. Such worlds are rated on a scale from Class 1 to Class 5. Class 3 represents conditions that would be fatal to 99% of known species within minutes of exposure. Elena absorbed this information. She began to understand what the Valorians were saying, but she could not quite believe it. "And you believe our vessel is built to survive such conditions?" "We do not believe, Commander. We have measured. Your ship's internal atmosphere contains oxygen at 21% concentration. For most species in the Concordat, that level of oxygen would cause rapid cellular damage and death. It is a corrosive and reactive gas. You breathe it constantly." Elena looked at her team. Dr. Okonkwo's expression behind his helmet visor showed the same dawning comprehension she felt. The Valorians were not talking about some far distant deadly world. They were talking about Earth. "Your internal gravity is set to 1.0 G standard," Kethriel continued. "For a Valorian, extended exposure to such gravity would crush our bones and damage our organs. We cannot stand in it for more than a few minutes at a time. Yet your crew lives and works in it constantly. The cosmic radiation passing through your hull exceeds safe exposure limits for most species by a factor of 3. Your vessel's hull is armored to withstand micrometeorite impacts that would destroy any standard Concordat ship. And yet you called this vessel an exploration craft. Not a military vessel. An exploration craft." Elena realized she needed to sit down. There were no chairs in the Valorian section that would fit a human, but she locked her suit joints and leaned against a support beam. Her mind was racing. Earth was a death world. To these beings who had explored the galaxy for thousands of years, Earth represented one of the most hostile environments imaginable. And humans had evolved there. Humans had survived there. Humans had built civilization and technology and spaceships there. "I think," Elena said slowly, "that we have a great deal to talk about." The next several hours were filled with questions and answers. The two groups sat together in the meeting chamber and exchanged information about their worlds and their peoples. The translation systems improved with each conversation, learning the nuances of both languages. Kethriel explained the Galactic Concordat. It was an alliance of 12 spacefaring species who had joined together more than 12,000 years ago. They shared technology and knowledge and resources. They maintained peace through cooperation and mutual benefit. All 12 species had evolved on what humans would call paradise worlds. Gentle gravity, stable climates, safe atmospheres. They had never fought a major war. They had never faced extinction. They had grown slowly and carefully into space. In return, Elena explained Earth. She described a world of constant change, continents that moved and crashed together over millions of years, ice ages that froze the planet, and warm periods that melted the ice, earthquakes and volcanoes and hurricanes and floods, a biosphere filled with predators and parasites and diseases all competing for survival. She described human history, the millions of years of evolution that had shaped their bodies for survival, the development of tools and fire and language, the rise of civilizations and the wars that destroyed them, the slow, painful progress toward the stars. The Valorians listened with growing amazement and horror. Every fact Elena shared seemed to confirm their worst assumptions about death worlds. And yet here she sat, alive and healthy, and talking calmly about things that should have been impossible. "Your species has fought wars?" Kethriel asked at one point. His skin had gone very pale. "Against each other?" "Yes. Many times throughout our history. We have only recently achieved something like lasting peace among our nations. And even now that peace is fragile. But you survived. You did not destroy yourselves. No. We came close. Several times. But we always pulled back at the last moment. I think some part of us understood that survival required cooperation. Even when we were fighting, we were also working together." Kethriel was silent for a long moment. His light shifted through colors Elena was beginning to recognize. Gray for concern, blue for deep thought, a flicker of yellow that seemed to indicate hope. "Commander Vasquez, I must confess something. When we first detected your vessel, we were afraid. The Concordat has protocols for Deathworld species. They are classified as extreme hazards, to be observed from a distance, never contacted. We assumed that any species capable of surviving such conditions would be violent and aggressive and hostile to all other life." Elena nodded slowly. "That is a reasonable assumption. Our history does not paint a pretty picture, and yet you came to meet us. You offered peace. Your first words were words of hope and friendship. This does not match our expectations. Perhaps, Elena said. Your expectations were wrong. Yes, we evolved on a world that tried to kill us every day. Yes, we developed the strength and endurance to survive those conditions, but we also developed something else. We developed the ability to work together, to trust each other, to see strangers as potential allies instead of certain enemies. She leaned forward slightly. Life on Earth taught us many hard lessons, but the hardest lesson was also the most important. We cannot survive alone. No one can. So we learned to reach out, to build connections, to find friends in the most unlikely places. Kethryl's skin glowed with a soft golden color. The translation system identified it as an expression of warmth and appreciation. You are not what we expected, Commander Vasquez. Your species is not what we expected. I hope that is a good thing. I believe it is. I believe it may be a very good thing indeed. The meeting continued for many more hours. Both crews shared meals from their respective supplies. The humans could not eat Valorian food and the Valorians could not eat human food, but they sat together and talked while they ate. They shared stories about their homes. They showed each other images and recordings of their worlds. When Dr. Okonkwo displayed a video of Earth, the Valorians gathered close to watch. They saw oceans and mountains and forests and deserts. They saw cities filled with millions of people. They saw animals running across open plains and birds flying through the sky and fish swimming in the deep. So many life forms, whispered Mythkal, the Valorian science officer. So much competition. How does anything survive? By being strong, Dr. Okonkwo replied. By being clever. By being fast or tough or well hidden. Life on Earth is a constant contest. Only the fittest survive. And your species won that contest. Dr. Okonkwo smiled behind his helmet. It was a strange expression to show beings who might not understand it, but he could not help himself. We did not exactly win. We just refused to lose. As the hours passed, the fear in the room slowly faded. The Valorians began to relax around their human guests. Their skin colors shifted to warmer tones. Their movements became less hesitant. They asked questions with genuine curiosity instead of nervous caution, and the humans in turn began to see the Valorians not as fragile aliens to be protected but as intelligent beings with their own strengths and their own wisdom. They had built a civilization that spanned the galaxy. They had maintained peace for thousands of years. They had created technology that made human achievements look primitive. Different did not mean lesser. That was a lesson both species were learning together. Finally, the meeting came to an end. Both crews were tired. The translators had been working hard and needed rest. There would be time for more conversations tomorrow and the day after that. Elena stood at the airlock preparing to return to the Magellan. Kethriel accompanied her to say goodbye. Commander Vasquez, I want to thank you for this day. You have given me much to think about, much to reconsider. Thank you as well, Kethriel. This is the most important day in human history. The day we learned we are not alone. I am honored that your people were the first we met. Kethriel made a gesture that the translation system identified as deep respect. I have one more question before you go. Your vessel, the Magellan. You said it was an exploration ship. How long have your people been exploring space? Elena considered the question. Humans first left our planet's atmosphere about 80 years ago. We reached our moon 60 years ago. We built our first interstellar vessel 12 years ago. The Magellan launched 18 months ago. Kethriel was silent. His skin had gone very still. No colors. No flickering. Just a pale, steady glow. 80 years, he said finally. Your species went from bound to your planet to traveling between stars in 80 years. Is that unusual? The Valorians took 4,000 years to achieve the same progress. The fastest species in the Concorda took 800 years. 80 years is not unusual, Commander Vasquez. It is unprecedented. Elena did not know what to say to that. She had never thought about human space exploration in comparison to other species. She had simply assumed that all intelligent beings would eventually reach the stars. It was the natural progression of technology. But looking at Kethriel now, she understood something. The Valorians and the other Concordate species had developed slowly and carefully because they could afford to. Their worlds were safe. Their lives were long. They had no reason to rush. Humans had rushed because they had no choice. Earth was dangerous. Life was short. Every generation faced new threats that could destroy everything they had built. Speed was not a luxury for humans. It was a survival strategy. We had good motivation, Elena said softly. Our world taught us that standing still meant death, so we learned to move forward as fast as we could, always looking for the next horizon, always reaching for something better. Kethral's skin flickered with that golden warmth again. Your people are remarkable, Commander Vasquez. Terrifying, perhaps, but remarkable. I prefer remarkable. Thank you for your hospitality, Kethral. I look forward to continuing our conversation tomorrow. As do I, Commander. As do I. Elena stepped through the airlock and began the journey back to her ship. Behind her, the Valorian vessel glowed softly in the darkness. Around her, the stars burned with ancient light. She had come into space hoping to find intelligent life. She had found something more. She had found a mirror, a way to see humanity from the outside. And what she saw was both humbling and inspiring. Humans were children of a death world. They were built for survival in conditions that would kill almost any other species. They were strong and fast and adaptable, and they never stopped moving forward. But they were also kind. They were also curious. They reached out to strangers with open hands instead of closed fists. They had learned from their violent history and chosen a different path. Perhaps the Concordat had been right to fear Deathworld species. Perhaps most such species really did destroy themselves or others. But humans had proven that it did not have to be that way. They had proven that even the children of nightmare worlds could choose peace, and now they had made friends among the stars. Elena smiled as she stepped back onto the Magellan. It was a good day. The first of many good days to come. Humanity was no longer alone, and the universe would never be the same. The days that followed the first meeting were filled with wonder and discovery. Both crews worked together to learn as much as they could about each other. Data was exchanged. Stories were shared. Slowly, the two species began to understand just how different they truly were. Dr. Samuel Okonkwo had set up a small research station in the connecting tunnel between the two ships. The atmosphere there was set to a compromise mixture that both species could tolerate for short periods. It was not comfortable for anyone, but it allowed direct interaction without full environmental suits. Today he was presenting a lecture on human biology to a group of Valorian scientists. Kethral was there along with Methkal, the science officer, and several other researchers whose names Samuel was still learning to pronounce. The human body, Samuel began, is built for survival in hostile conditions. Every major system has redundancy built in. We have 2 lungs, 2 kidneys, 2 eyes, 2 ears. If one fails, the other can keep us alive. He brought up a diagram on his portable display. It showed the human skeletal system in detail. Our bones are made of a calcium composite that can heal itself when damaged. A broken bone will naturally grow back together over time without surgical intervention. The process takes several weeks, but in most cases, the repaired bone is as strong as the original. Methkal leaned forward with obvious fascination. Your bones can repair themselves? Without medical technology? Yes. It is a natural biological process. The body recognizes the damage and begins producing new bone tissue to fill the gap. We can accelerate the process with modern medicine, but even without intervention, most breaks will heal eventually. Valorian bones do not repair themselves, Methkal said quietly. A broken bone must be surgically reconstructed using synthetic materials. Otherwise, the limb is lost. Samuel nodded. He had learned this fact yesterday and it had shocked him. The Valorians were so advanced in so many ways, but their bodies were fundamentally fragile. They had compensated with technology, but the underlying biology could not compare to human durability. The human skeletal system also serves another purpose, Samuel continued. Our bones produce blood cells in their internal marrow. Red blood cells that carry oxygen. White blood cells that fight infection. Platelets that seal wounds. Our bones are not just structural support. They are factories for the components our body needs to survive. He switched to a new diagram. This one showed the human immune system in all its complexity. Speaking of infection, humans are constantly under attack from microscopic organisms, bacteria, viruses, fungi, parasites. Our world is filled with life forms that would like to consume us or use our bodies as hosts for their reproduction. The Valorians made sounds of discomfort. Their skin flickered with gray and dark purple, fear and disgust. To survive this constant assault, we have developed an immune system of remarkable sophistication. Our bodies can identify foreign organisms and produce specific countermeasures to destroy them. We call these countermeasures antibodies. Once our immune system has encountered a threat, it remembers that threat forever and can respond more quickly if it appears again. Your body fights a war, Kethriel said slowly. Every moment of every day. Inside your own flesh. That is one way to describe it. We rarely think about it consciously. The immune system operates automatically without our awareness. But yes, every human is a battlefield where our cells fight invaders constantly. And the invaders, these microscopic organisms, what happens if they win? Samuel's expression became serious. Then we get sick. Sometimes we die. Throughout human history, disease has killed more of us than any other cause. Wars and natural disasters are nothing compared to the plagues that have swept through our populations. Yet you survived, Methkal said. Despite these plagues, your species continued. We survived because our immune system evolved to match the threats. The strongest immune systems survived and passed their traits to the next generation. Over millions of years, this process produced the defensive capabilities we have today. It was not a gift. It was earned through countless deaths. Samuel paused to let this information settle. Then he brought up a new diagram. This one showed the human cardiovascular system, with its network of blood vessels spreading through the body like rivers through a landscape. Human blood is perhaps the most interesting aspect of our biology from your perspective. It serves multiple functions simultaneously. It carries oxygen from our lungs to our cells. It carries nutrients from our digestive system to where they are needed. It carries waste products to our kidneys and liver for processing. And it carries the cells of our immune system throughout our body to fight infection, wherever it appears. One fluid doing all of that? Methkal asked. Yes. Our blood is constantly circulating, powered by a muscular pump we call the heart. The heart beats approximately once per second without rest for our entire lives. If it stops beating, we die within minutes. Kethriel spoke up. You said your hearts beat approximately once per second. Hearts. Plural. Samuel smiled slightly. No. Humans have only one heart. I misspoke. But you raise an interesting point. A single heart with no backup is one of the few vulnerabilities in human biology. If it fails, there is no redundant system to take over. This is why heart disease is one of the leading causes of death among my species. One heart, constantly beating, for your entire life. Kethriel seemed to be struggling with this concept. How long does a human typically live? On average, about 80 of our years. Some live longer. The oldest recorded human lived to 122 years. And during all that time, the heart never rests? Never. From before birth until the moment of death, the heart beats constantly. It cannot stop without killing us. The Valorians were silent for a long moment. Samuel could see them processing this information, comparing it to their own biology. He had learned that Valorians had multiple small hearts distributed throughout their bodies. Each one could rest while the others worked. The idea of a single tireless pump keeping them alive every second of every day was apparently difficult for them to comprehend. Let me show you something else, Samuel said. He brought up a new image. This one showed the human brain in cross-section with different regions highlighted in different colors. This is the human brain. It is the center of our consciousness, our thoughts, our memories, our personality. Everything that makes us who we are exists in this 3-pound mass of tissue. The brain is also connected to every part of our body through a network of nerves. These nerves carry signals at incredible speed, allowing us to perceive the world and respond to it almost instantly. When I reach out to touch something, the signal travels from my brain to my hand in a fraction of a second. When my hand touches the object, the sensation travels back to my brain just as quickly. Methkal was studying the diagram intently. The processing capacity of your neural network. Can you estimate it? That is a difficult question. The human brain contains approximately 86 billion neurons. Each neuron can connect to thousands of others. The total number of potential connections is larger than the number of stars in the galaxy. And this brain evolved on your Deathworld? Through natural selection? Yes. Intelligence was another survival adaptation. Our ancestors could not compete with predators through physical strength alone. We were not the fastest or the strongest animals on Earth, but we could think. We could plan. We could work together and solve problems that no individual could solve alone. Samuel brought up one final diagram. This one showed 2 human figures side by side. One was calm and relaxed. The other was in an aggressive posture with muscles tensed and eyes wide. This brings me to perhaps the most important aspect of human biology. Our stress response. When a human perceives danger, our body undergoes a rapid transformation. We call it the fight or flight response. The adrenal glands above our kidneys release hormones into our bloodstream. These hormones cause immediate changes throughout our body. Our heart rate increases, pumping more blood to our muscles. Our breathing deepens, bringing more oxygen into our system. Our pupils dilate, improving our vision. Our pain tolerance increases, allowing us to ignore injuries. Our reaction speed improves. Our strength temporarily increases. In short, when a human is threatened, we become more dangerous, not less. Our body transforms itself into a more effective survival machine. The change happens in seconds and can last for several minutes. Kethryl's skin had gone completely gray. You become stronger when threatened, more capable, more dangerous. Yes, it is an automatic response. We cannot control it consciously. When danger appears, our body prepares us to either fight or run away. For most of human history, this response was the difference between life and death. And if you choose to fight, what happens then? Samuel considered how to answer this question. He wanted to be honest, but he did not want to frighten the Valorians more than necessary. Humans are capable of extreme violence when threatened. Our bodies are built for it. Our teeth can bite. Our hands can grip and strike. Our muscles can generate significant force. A desperate human fighting for survival is a formidable opponent. But we also have the capacity to control these impulses. Our large brains allow us to override our instincts with rational thought. We can choose not to fight even when our bodies are screaming at us to attack. This ability to control our violent nature is perhaps the most important thing our species has ever developed, because without that control you would destroy yourselves. Kethryl said softly. We very nearly did. Many times. But we always pulled back. We always found another way. The capacity for violence does not define us. The choice not to use it does. The lecture continued for another hour. Samuel covered additional topics including human nutrition and the wide variety of substances humans could safely consume. He explained human reproduction and the long period of development required for human children to reach maturity. He discussed human senses and the limitations and capabilities of human perception. By the end, the Valorian scientists looked overwhelmed. They had taken extensive notes and recorded everything, but their expressions suggested they were struggling to process what they had learned. Dr. Okonkwo, Kethryl said finally, I must ask you a direct question. Please answer honestly. Of course. Does your species know war? Samuel had expected this question eventually. He had prepared for it. But he still took a moment before answering to make sure he said the right words. Yes. Humans have known war for our entire recorded history. We have fought each other over territory and resources and ideology and religion, and sometimes for reasons we do not fully understand ourselves. Millions upon millions of us have died in these conflicts. We have also developed weapons of terrible power. Weapons that could destroy entire cities in an instant. Weapons that could render our planet uninhabitable. We built these weapons. We pointed them at each other. For decades we lived under the shadow of potential annihilation. Kethryl's skin flickered rapidly through multiple colors. Fear, concern, something that might have been horror. And yet you did not use them. You are still here. We came close. Several times the fate of our species hung by a thread. But in the end we always chose not to cross that final line. We recognized that some weapons are too terrible to use, that some victories would leave nothing worth winning. It was not easy. There were moments when the decision rested with single individuals who had every reason to give the order, who believed they were right to do so. But they held back. Something in them refused to take that final step. Samuel paused. He could see the Valorians watching him with an intensity that felt almost physical. They needed to understand what he was about to say. They needed to believe it. Humans are capable of great violence. This is true. We evolved on a world that rewarded aggression and punished weakness. But we are also capable of great compassion, great sacrifice, great love. The same biology that makes us dangerous also makes us protective. We will fight to the death to protect those we care about. We will risk everything to save strangers we have never met. The choice is always ours. Violence or peace, destruction or creation, hate or love. We have made the wrong choice many times, but we are still trying. We are still learning. We are still reaching for something better than what we were. Kethryl was silent for a long time. His skin had settled to a deep, thoughtful blue. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet but clear. The Galactic Concordat has protocols for Deathworld species. They were written thousands of years ago by species who feared what such worlds might produce. The protocols assume that any species surviving such conditions would be irredeemably hostile, dangerous beyond possibility of peaceful contact. I believed those protocols were wise. I believed they were based on sound reasoning and careful analysis. Now I am not so certain. Your species is everything the protocols warned about. You are strong and violent, and capable of terrible destruction. By every measure we use to assess threat, you should be our enemies. But you are also kind. You reached out to us in peace. You shared your knowledge freely. You treated us with respect and curiosity instead of fear and aggression. You are not what the protocols predicted. Samuel nodded slowly. Perhaps the protocols were based on incomplete data. Perhaps the species who wrote them never actually met anyone from a Deathworld. They imagined what such beings might be like, and their imagination defaulted to monsters. Humans have done the same thing. For centuries we imagined alien life as hostile invaders coming to destroy us. We wrote stories about wars between worlds. We built weapons designed to fight threats from the sky. We assumed that anyone different from us must be dangerous. Meeting you has shown me how wrong those assumptions were. You are nothing like the aliens we imagined. You are gentle and curious and welcoming. You are everything we hoped to find and nothing we feared. Kethriel's skin glowed with warm golden light. Then perhaps we are both learning the same lesson, that intelligent beings cannot be judged by where they come from, only by what they choose to do. I think that is the most important lesson there is, Samuel agreed. The two scientists sat together in silence for a while. Around them, the neutral territory of the connecting tunnel hummed with the life support systems of both ships working to keep them alive. Outside the walls, the cold, dark universe stretched in all directions. Billions of stars, countless worlds, endless possibilities, and here in this small space between two vessels, representatives of two very different species had found common ground. Not despite their differences, but because they chose to look beyond those differences to what they shared. The desire to understand, the hope for connection, the belief that friendship was possible even between beings who should have been enemies. It was a small moment in the vast scale of the cosmos. But small moments had a way of changing everything. Kethriel stood. His tall, thin form towered over Samuel even with the reduced gravity. Dr. Okonkwo, I would like to propose something. What do you have in mind? The gentle whisper carries records from the Galactic Concordat. History, science, culture, knowledge gathered over 12,000 years from 12 different species. I would like to share these records with your crew. All of them. As a gift from my people to yours. Samuel felt his breath catch in his throat. 12,000 years of knowledge. The accumulated wisdom of a dozen civilizations. It was an offering beyond price. And in return, Kethriel continued, I would ask you to share your records with us. Everything you know about Earth and humanity. Your history. Your science. Your art and culture and dreams. I want to understand your species, not as a potential threat, but as potential friends. Samuel stood and extended his hand. It was a human gesture that he doubted Kethriel would understand. But the meaning was clear. Partnership, agreement, trust. Kethriel looked at the extended hand for a moment. Then slowly he reached out with his own long, delicate fingers and clasped Samuel's hand in what both species recognized as a grip of friendship. It seems, Kethriel said with a flicker of warm golden light, that children of paradise and children of death can learn from each other after all. I think, Samuel replied with a smile, that we have only just begun. The alarm woke Commander Elena Vasquez from a deep sleep. She was out of her bunk and on her feet before her eyes were fully open. Years of training had taught her to respond first and ask questions later. Report, she called out as she ran toward the bridge. Her voice carried through the ship's internal communication system. Lieutenant Chen's response came immediately. Commander, we have a major problem. The Valorians are reporting a Class 7 gravimetric disturbance in the outer system. Something is collapsing in subspace. Elena reached the bridge and threw herself into the command chair. The main display showed a section of space far from both ships. At first it looked normal. Then she noticed the distortion. A patch of stars that seemed to shimmer and twist in ways that violated everything she knew about physics. What are we looking at? A subspace fold is collapsing, said Science Officer Dr. Okonkwo from his station. He had dark circles under his eyes, suggesting he had been awake for hours studying data from the Valorians. According to the Gentle Whispers sensors, this kind of event releases massive amounts of radiation. We are talking about energy levels that would fry every unshielded system on both ships. How long until it reaches us? The Valorians estimate approximately 2 hours, maybe less. There is significant uncertainty in their calculations because they have never observed a collapse of this magnitude. 2 hours. Elena looked at the tactical display showing the positions of both ships. They were deep in the gravity well of the system. Getting out would require sustained acceleration at maximum engine power. Can we reach minimum safe distance in time? Lieutenant Commander Park ran the calculations. His expression told Elena the answer before he spoke. The Magellan can do it. We have the engine power. But Commander, the gentle whisper, cannot. Explain. Valorian ships are designed for efficiency, not speed. Their engines are powerful enough for normal operations, but this situation requires emergency acceleration. According to their specifications, the gentle whisper can only manage 0.1 g continuous thrust. At that rate, they will still be in the radiation zone when the wavefront hits. Elena felt cold settle in her stomach. The Valorians were going to die. Unless something changed, they were going to be caught in a radiation storm that would kill every living thing on their ship. "Get me Kethriel," she ordered. The communication link opened within seconds. Kethriel's image appeared on the main display. His skin was flickering rapidly with colors Elena now recognized as extreme stress, gray and dark blue and purple all mixing together in chaotic patterns. "Commander Vasquez, I assume your sensors have detected the disturbance." "Yes." "Kethriel, I need to ask you directly. Can your ship escape in time?" The Valorian was silent for a moment. His lights flickered even faster. "No. We have calculated all possible options. Our engines cannot generate sufficient thrust to clear the danger zone before the wavefront arrives. The gentle whisper and its crew will not survive." Elena heard the despair in his translated words. He had already accepted that he was going to die, that his entire crew was going to die, and there was nothing he could do about it. "No," Elena said firmly. "That is not acceptable. Commander Vasquez, I appreciate your concern, but there is no alternative. Physics cannot be bargained with. Our engines are simply not capable of the required performance. Your engines are not, but ours are." Elena turned to Park. "Calculate a towing profile. The Magellan will drag the gentle whisper out of the danger zone." Park's eyes went wide. "Commander, that would require acceleration, stress that could damage both ships. The structural forces involved would be extreme." I said calculate it. Now. Park bent over his console. His fingers flew across the controls as he ran simulation after simulation. The bridge was silent, except for the soft hum of equipment and the clicking of keys. Kethriel spoke through the communication link. His voice was hesitant. "Commander Vasquez, what are you proposing?" "We are going to attach towing cables to your ship and pull you to safety. Your crew will have to survive whatever acceleration we can manage, but you will survive. That is what matters. The structural stress on the gentle whisper would be significant. Our hull was not designed for such forces. Then we will reinforce it. We have engineers. We have materials. We will make it work." "Commander." Kethriel's skin had shifted to a complex mix of colors. Surprise and hope and fear all blended together. "Your crew would be taking enormous risks. If something goes wrong during the tow, you could be trapped in the radiation zone as well. You could all die." Elena looked directly into the camera that was transmitting her image to the Valorian ship. "Kethriel, your people welcomed us. You shared your knowledge with us. You treated us as friends when you had every reason to fear us. We do not abandon our friends." "Park, what is the maximum safe acceleration for the gentle whisper?" "Based on their hull specifications, I would estimate 0.3 g. Any more than that, and we risk structural failure." 0.3 g for how long to reach minimum safe distance? 6 hours, Commander. If we start immediately and maintain constant acceleration for 6 hours, both ships will clear the danger zone with approximately 7 minutes to spare. 6 hours at 0.3 g. For humans, that would be uncomfortable but manageable. Their bodies were designed to handle such forces. But for the Valorians who normally lived at 0.3 g, it would be grueling. Their bodies would be under constant stress. They might suffer injuries, but they would survive. "Kethriel, can your crew survive 6 hours at 0.3 g acceleration?" The Valorian commander consulted with someone off-screen. When he turned back, his skin showed grim determination. "It will be painful. Some of my crew may suffer injuries, but we believe it is survivable." "Yes, then we do it. All hands, this is Commander Vasquez. We are initiating emergency towing procedures. I want engineering teams suited up and ready to move in 10 minutes. We are going to pull the Gentle Whisper out of the fire. The next hour was controlled chaos. Human crew members swarmed over both ships, working at furious speed to prepare for the tow. Engineer Maria Santos led a team onto the hull of the Magellan to attach heavy-duty towing cables. The cables were meant for salvage operations. They had never been tested at the forces they were about to experience. Meanwhile, other teams moved onto the Gentle Whisper to reinforce critical structural points. They worked alongside Valorian engineers who provided guidance on where their ship was strongest and weakest. The translation systems were pushed to their limits as technical jargon flew back and forth between the two crews. Elena watched the operation from the bridge of the Magellan. She had never felt more proud of her crew. They moved with purpose and efficiency despite the danger. Every person knew what was at stake. Every person was giving everything they had. "Commander," said Lieutenant Chen. "Engineering reports towing cables are secure. The Gentle Whisper confirms structural reinforcement is complete. Time until the wavefront, 1 hour, 12 minutes. Elena took a deep breath. "All hands secure for acceleration. Valorian vessel prepare for tow. We begin in 5 minutes. The minutes crawled by. Elena used the time to make final checks on every system. The engines, the cables, the life support. Everything had to work perfectly for the next 6 hours or everyone died. 30 seconds, Chen announced. Elena opened a channel to the Gentle Whisper. "Kethriel, we are about to begin. Tell your crew to hold on, Commander Vasquez. Whatever happens, I want you to know that your actions today honor everything your species could be. Thank you. Save the thanks for when we make it. Beginning acceleration now." The Magellan's engines roared to life. Elena felt herself pressed back into her chair as the ship surged forward. The artificial gravity compensated for most of the force, but she could still feel the acceleration in her bones, a constant pressure pushing her toward the rear of the ship. On the display, she watched the towing cables go taut. For a horrible moment, she thought they might snap. The strain was immense. Metal groaned and creaked as forces designed for one ship were distributed across two. But the cables held. The Gentle Whisper began to move. Slowly at first, then faster as the Magellan's powerful engines found their rhythm. Both ships accelerated together away from the coming storm. "Tow is successful," Chen reported. His voice was tight with tension. Both ships accelerating at 0.31 G. Structural readings are within acceptable limits. How is the Gentle Whisper holding up? Minor stress fractures in 3 secondary bulkheads. Nothing critical. Their crew is reporting extreme discomfort but no serious injuries so far. 6 hours was a long time. Anything could go wrong. The first hour passed slowly. Elena divided her attention between monitoring the ships and tracking the approaching wavefront. The subspace collapse was expanding faster than the initial estimates. Their 7-minute margin was shrinking. "Engineering," Elena called. "Can we increase acceleration at all?" Maria Santos responded from somewhere deep in the Magellan's engine room. "We can push to 0.35 if we have to. But Commander, I am already asking a lot from these engines. If we push harder, we risk a failure that would strand us both." "Understood. Hold at current thrust." Hour 2. The stress was beginning to show on both crews. The humans were tired and anxious. The Valorians were suffering under the constant weight of acceleration. Reports came in of Valorian crew members collapsing at their stations. Medical teams on both ships worked to treat injuries as they occurred. Hour 3. A towing cable showed signs of metal fatigue. Santos took a team outside in emergency suits to reinforce the connection. They worked in the harsh light of the system's star with radiation alarms constantly beeping warnings. The cosmic rays passing through their suits were approaching dangerous levels, but they kept working. "Santos report," Elena called. "Cable reinforced, Commander. It will hold. Just make sure we do not hit any bumps on the way." There were no bumps in space, but Elena appreciated the humor. Santos and her team were risking their lives to save people they had only met a few days ago. That was the kind of crew she had. Hour 4. The wavefront was clearly visible now on the sensors, a wall of radiation expanding outward from the collapsed subspace fold. It looked almost beautiful in its way, swirling patterns of energy that would have been fascinating to study if they were not deadly. "Time to wavefront arrival at our projected position," Elena asked. 14 minutes, Chen replied. "We will clear the danger zone with approximately 5 minutes to spare at current acceleration." 5 minutes. Better than nothing, but not much margin for error. Hour 5. Something broke on the gentle whisper. A secondary power conduit that fed their life support system. The backup systems activated, but they were designed for Valorian normal conditions. At point 3G they were struggling. Kethril, what is your situation? We are managing, Commander. Some compartments are losing atmosphere, but we have sealed them. My crew is strong. We will endure. Elena heard the pain in his voice even through the translation. He was suffering. His whole crew was suffering. But they kept going because the alternative was death. Hour 5.5. Another problem. One of the Magellan's engine cooling systems was failing. The sustained high output was generating more heat than the system could handle. If the engines overheated, they would shut down automatically, and both ships would coast to a stop still inside the danger zone. Engineering options, Elena demanded. Santos responded immediately. I can bypass the failing cooler and redirect flow through the secondary system. It will work, but I have to do it manually. The repair will take about 20 minutes. We do not have 20 minutes. I know, Commander. I am going to work fast. Elena watched the sensor displays as Santos disappeared into the depths of the engine room. The wavefront was expanding. The ships were accelerating. The clock was counting down. Everything hung in balance. 15 minutes later, Santos called in. Bypass complete. Cooling restored. Engines are running clean. Elena released a breath she had not realized she was holding. Outstanding work, Santos. Drinks are on me when we get home. I am going to hold you to that, Commander. The final 30 minutes were the longest of Elena's life. She watched the distance counter slowly increase as both ships raced ahead of the approaching wavefront. She watched the structural monitors for any sign of failure. She listened to reports from both crews documenting the small crises and close calls that kept threatening to derail everything. And then finally it was over. Wavefront passing behind us, Chen announced. His voice cracked with relief. We are clear. Both ships are outside the danger zone. The bridge erupted in cheers. Elena slumped back in her chair and let the tension drain from her body. They had done it. Against all odds and all expectations, they had pulled the gentle whisper to safety. All ships reduce acceleration to 0.1G, Elena ordered. Begin damage assessment. And get me Kethril. The Valorian commander's image appeared on the display a moment later. He looked exhausted. His skin was pale and his lights were dim and flickering. But he was alive. His whole crew was alive. Commander Vasquez, Kethril said. His voice was barely above a whisper. You saved us. You risked everything to save us. That is what friends do, Kethril. How is your crew? Injured. Exhausted. Several will need medical attention when we reach a proper facility. But everyone survived. 112 souls who would be dead right now if not for you. Elena nodded. We have medical supplies and personnel who can help. We will do whatever we can. Why? Kethril asked suddenly. His lights flickered with something Elena could not identify. Why did you do this? We are strangers to you. We are not even the same species. You could have saved yourselves and left us to die. No one would have blamed you. It was a fair question. Elena thought about how to answer it. Kethril, when I was young I learned a story about my species. It was about a time long ago when two groups of humans were at war. One group captured soldiers from the other group and held them prisoner. The prisoners were cold and hungry and sick. They were enemies. They should have been left to suffer. But one woman in the capturing group looked at those prisoners and saw not enemies but human beings. She gave them blankets and food and medicine. She treated their wounds even though they had been trying to kill her people just days before. When asked why she did this, she said something I have never forgotten. She said that kindness is not a reward for good behavior. It is a choice we make about who we want to be. We can choose to be cruel when cruelty is justified, or we can choose to be kind even when kindness is difficult. The choice defines us. Today, my crew and I chose kindness. We chose to help strangers who needed help. Not because we expected anything in return, not because it was safe or easy, but because it was the right thing to do. Kethril was silent for a long moment. His skin slowly began to glow with warm golden light. The brightest, warmest light Elena had ever seen from him. Commander Vasquez, when I first saw your ship I was afraid. I thought you were monsters from a nightmare world. I thought you would bring violence and destruction wherever you went. I was wrong. Your species evolved on a death world. You developed the strength and endurance to survive conditions that would kill any other intelligent being. But you also developed something else, something I do not have a name for, a capacity for compassion that defies explanation. You are terrifying, Elena Vasquez. You and your crew. You are the most dangerous beings I have ever met. But you are also the kindest. And that combination is something the galaxy has never seen before. Elena smiled. It was a tired smile, an exhausted smile, but it was genuine. We are just trying to be better than we used to be. That is all anyone can do. I think, Kethril said slowly, that you are succeeding. The two ships drifted together in the quiet dark of space. Behind them, the radiation storm raged on, consuming everything it touched. But they were safe. They had outrun the fire. They had survived together, and in surviving together they had forged something new. A bond between two species that should never have met. A friendship that would change the course of history. Neither commander knew it yet, but the events of this day would echo through the galaxy for thousands of years. The day the humans came. The day everything changed. For now, though, they were just tired. They were just grateful to be alive. And that was enough. The great council chamber of the Galactic Concordat had stood for more than 11,000 years. Its walls were carved from stone quarried on 12 different worlds. Its ceiling arched overhead in a dome that displayed real-time images of the galaxy itself. Stars by the billions glowed above the gathered representatives like the eyes of ancestors watching from eternity. Senior Surveyor Kethril had never stood before the council before. In 300 years of service, he had submitted countless reports through official channels. He had received commendations and promotions, but he had never been summoned to appear in person. The council only summoned surveyors when something truly extraordinary had occurred. Today was such a day. He stood at the center of the chamber on a raised platform that allowed all representatives to see him clearly. Around him, in concentric rings, sat the leaders of 12 spacefaring civilizations, Valorians like himself with their soft, glowing skin, Thessians with their round organic bodies covered in sensory cilia, Kethvari whose long needle-shaped forms seemed to defy gravity, and 9 other species, each unique, each ancient, each powerful in their own way. High Counselor Vethmar presided over the assembly. She was old, even by Valorian standards. Her light had faded to a dim pale blue that spoke of wisdom earned through countless centuries of service. Her voice, when she spoke, filled the chamber without amplification. Senior Surveyor Kethril, you have submitted a report that has caused considerable concern among the Council. A report claiming first contact with a species from a Class 3 Deathworld. Is this report accurate? It is, High Counselor. A murmur ran through the chamber. Representatives leaned toward each other to exchange quiet words. Skin flickered with colors of surprise and unease. Describe this species, Vethmar commanded. Kethril had prepared for this moment. He had spent the entire journey back to Concordat space, organizing his thoughts, reviewing his recordings, choosing his words with care. They call themselves humans. They originate from a planet called Earth, which orbits a yellow star in an uncharted region of the outer rim. Earth meets all criteria for Class 3 Deathworld classification. Extreme gravity at 1.0 G. Toxic oxygen, nitrogen atmosphere. Geological and meteorological instability. Ecosystem dominated by predatory and parasitic life forms. The humans have evolved biological adaptations that allow them to survive these conditions. Reinforced skeletal structure capable of self-repair. Redundant organ systems. Highly developed immune response to combat constant microbial threats. Cardiovascular system powered by a single tireless muscle that beats without rest for their entire lives. They possess a neurological stress response that enhances their physical capabilities when threatened. Under duress, they become stronger, faster, more resistant to pain. They are persistence predators who evolve to run prey to exhaustion over long distances. Another murmur, this one louder, more disturbed. And their disposition? Vethmar asked. Are they hostile as the protocols predict? This was the critical question. Kethril knew that his answer would determine how the Concordat responded to humanity. He chose his words with extreme care. No, High Counselor. They are not hostile. When we first made contact, Commander Elena Vasquez of the human vessel Magellan greeted us with words of peace and friendship. She expressed genuine joy at meeting another intelligent species. She shared information about her people freely and honestly. I spent many cycles aboard the human vessel learning about their culture and history. Yes, they are capable of violence. Their history contains many wars and conflicts, but they are also capable of remarkable compassion. They have developed complex systems of ethics and morality. They debate among themselves about the right way to treat others. They strive to be better than their instincts would make them. And then there is what they did for us. Kethriel paused. The chamber was completely silent. Every representative was watching him with total attention. During our contact, a Class 7 gravimetric disturbance occurred in the system. The resulting radiation wavefront would have destroyed the gentle whisper. Our engines could not generate sufficient thrust to escape in time. By all measures, we should have died. Commander Vasquez refused to accept this. She ordered her crew to attach towing cables to our vessel and drag us to safety. The operation required 6 hours of sustained acceleration at forces that caused injuries to my crew. The humans risked their own lives and their own ship to save us. When I asked Commander Vasquez why she had done this, she told me a story. A story about choosing kindness even when cruelty would be easier. A story about defining oneself through compassion rather than strength. She said that helping strangers in need was simply the right thing to do. Kethriel let that sink in. He could see the representatives processing his words, struggling to reconcile what they were hearing with everything they had believed about Deathworld species. High Counselor, Council members, I have served the Concordat for 300 years. I have encountered many species in that time. Some were friendly, some were hostile, some were indifferent, but I have never met anyone like the humans. They are terrifying. There is no other word for it. Their biology is designed for violence and survival in conditions that would kill any of us. They have the capacity to be the most dangerous species in the galaxy, but they choose not to be. They look at their violent past and they work to build a peaceful future. They see strangers in need and they risk everything to help. They have every reason to be monsters, and yet they strive to be good. The protocols we have for Deathworld species assume that such beings would be irredeemably hostile. I believe those protocols are wrong. I believe the humans prove that evolution does not determine destiny, that even children of nightmare worlds can choose to be kind. Kethriel bowed his head. I recommend that the Galactic Concordat establish formal diplomatic relations with humanity. I recommend that we share our knowledge and technology with them as allies rather than isolate them as threats. They are young and they are dangerous, but they are also our future. The chamber exploded into debate. Representatives from all 12 species spoke over each other in a cacophony of languages and translation systems. Some argued for caution, some argued for engagement, some argued for immediate defensive measures just in case. High Counselor Vethmar let the debate continue for several minutes. Then she raised her hand and silence fell. Senior Surveyor Kethriel, you have given us much to consider. The Council will deliberate and render a decision in due time. For now, I have one final question. Yes, High Counselor. You said the humans reached interstellar travel within 80 years of leaving their planet's atmosphere. Is this correct? It is, High Counselor. Vethmar's ancient eyes studied Kethriel with an intensity that made him want to look away. And how long would you estimate before they develop technology comparable to our own? It was a question Kethriel had asked himself many times during the journey home. The answer frightened him. Based on their rate of progress and their apparent drive to improve, I would estimate 100 to 200 years, perhaps less if they gain access to Concordat knowledge. The silence that followed was deafening. 100 years. A blink of an eye by Concordat standards. The humans would go from first contact to technological parity within a single Valorian lifetime. Then it seems, Vethmar said slowly, that we do not have the luxury of deliberating for centuries as we usually do. The humans are coming whether we are ready or not. The only question is whether they come as friends or as something else. She turned to address the full council. Representatives, I move that we establish immediate contact with the human government. We will offer them provisional membership in the Concordat with full membership pending demonstration of peaceful intent. We will share knowledge on a limited basis at first, expanding as trust develops. We cannot treat them as we have treated Deathworld species in the past. They are not mindless monsters to be contained. They are a young civilization with extraordinary potential. Our choice now is whether to guide that potential or to fear it. I choose guidance. I choose hope. I choose to believe that the universe is large enough for all of us. The vote was not unanimous. Some species abstained. A few voted against. But the majority supported Vethmar's motion. For the first time in thousands of years, the Galactic Concordat opened its doors to a species from a Deathworld. The news spread across the galaxy in days. A new species, humans, from a world called Earth, strong and dangerous and strange, but also curious and compassionate. and eager to make friends. Some species were afraid. They saw the humans as a threat that would eventually consume everything. They argued for preemptive action before the humans grew too powerful to stop. Others were fascinated. They wanted to meet these impossible beings who breathed poison and walked in crushing gravity. They wanted to learn from a species that had done in 80 years what took others thousands. And some were simply curious. What would happen when children of paradise met children of nightmare? What would the galaxy look like when humans took their place among the stars? Nobody knew. The future was unwritten. But for the first time in a very long time, that future felt exciting rather than predictable. Far away across the vast empty spaces between stars, the Magellan continued its journey. Commander Elena Vasquez sat in her quarters reviewing the star charts that Kethriel had provided before they parted ways. Thousands of systems were marked. Hundreds of species. More wonder and mystery than a single lifetime could explore. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. Enter. Dr. Samuel Okonkwo stepped inside. He looked tired, but his eyes were bright with excitement. Commander, we have received a transmission from the Valorian relay station. It is from Kethriel. What does it say? The Galactic Concordat has voted to establish formal relations with humanity. They want to send an embassy to Earth. They want to welcome us into their alliance. Elena set down the star charts. She had hoped for this outcome but had not dared to expect it. The universe had just opened up in ways she could barely comprehend. What else? Kethriel included a personal message. He says that the council debated for many hours. There was strong opposition. Many species feared what humans might become. But in the end, they chose hope over fear. They chose to give us a chance. He says that we should expect visitors soon. Representatives from multiple species who want to meet us. He says we should prepare ourselves because the galaxy is about to become very interested in humanity. Elena laughed. She could not help it. A month ago she had been sailing through empty space hoping to find a single alien microbe. Now she was an ambassador for her entire species standing at the threshold of a galactic civilization. Tell Kethriel thank you. Tell him we look forward to welcoming his people and all peoples who come in peace. Tell him that humanity is ready to take its place among the stars. She stood and walked to the observation window. Outside, the stars burned with ancient light. Each one was a sun. Many had planets. Some of those planets had life. And now humanity knew they were not alone. Samuel, before you go, I want to send a message to Earth. Yes, Commander. First contact successful. We have made friends. They think we are terrifying, but they are willing to give us a chance. The galaxy is vast and old and filled with wonders we cannot imagine, and we are no longer alone. She paused, thinking about everything that had happened. Everything that was about to happen. Tell them that the universe has been waiting for us. Tell them that we have a lot of catching up to do. Tell them that humanity's greatest adventure is just beginning. Okonkwo nodded and left to send the message. Elena remained at the window watching the stars. She thought about Earth, about the billions of people living their lives unaware of how everything was about to change, about the children being born right now who would grow up in a galaxy full of wonders. She thought about her crew, about the courage they had shown, about the kindness they had demonstrated when they saved the gentle Whisper. They had proven something important, something the galaxy needed to see. Humans were not just survivors. They were not just dangerous predators from a nightmare world. They were also protectors, helpers, friends. That was the message they had sent to the universe. Not with words, but with actions. We are strong. We are capable of great violence. But we choose to be kind. We choose to reach out rather than strike. We choose to build bridges rather than burn them. It was a message that would echo through history. The day humanity met the stars and proved that children of Deathworlds could still choose light over darkness. Elena smiled. It was a good message, a true message. And now the whole galaxy was listening. She turned back to her charts and began planning the route to the nearest Concordat outpost. There were introductions to make, friendships to build, a universe to explore. The Magellan's engines hummed with power. The stars called out in their eternal voices. And humanity answered. They had always answered. Through ice ages and plagues and wars and disasters. Through every hardship their world had thrown at them. They had survived. They had adapted. They had grown. And now they were going to do the same thing on a scale the galaxy had never seen. Not through conquest or domination, but through courage and compassion, and an unquenchable desire to see what lay beyond the next horizon. The humans were coming. The universe would never be the same, and that was exactly how it should be. Elena entered the new heading into the navigation computer and authorized the course change. The Magellan turned gracefully toward distant stars, toward new friends and new challenges and new opportunities. "Attention all hands," Elena announced over the ship's communication system. "This is Commander Vasquez. Set course for Concordat space. We have been invited to join a galactic community. Let's not keep them waiting." The crew responded with cheers that echoed through the corridors. They had come so far. They had proven so much. And the journey was only beginning. Elena sat back in her command chair and watched the stars streak past as the ship accelerated. Somewhere out there among those countless points of light, beings from a dozen worlds were preparing to meet humanity, some with fear, some with hope, all with curiosity about these impossible creatures from a Deathworld who had reached for the stars and refused to let go. She hoped they would not be disappointed. She believed they would not be. Because whatever else humans might be, they were always reaching, always growing, always becoming something more than they were before. That was the gift of Earth. The gift of surviving a world that tried to kill them every day. They had learned that standing still meant death, that the only way to live was to keep moving forward, and now they would carry that lesson to the stars. They would share it with every species they met. They would prove that evolution was not destiny, that the circumstances of one's birth did not determine the content of one's character. The humans were coming, with open hands and open hearts, ready to make friends, ready to learn, ready to help, ready to show the universe what children of a Deathworld could become when they chose hope over fear. The Magellan flew on into the endless dark. Behind it, a message traveled at the speed of light toward distant Earth, a message of hope, a message of possibility, a message that everything was about to change. And among the stars where the gentle whisper made its way home, Senior Surveyor Kethria looked out at the void and smiled in his own way. He had met monsters. He had found friends. He had learned that the universe was stranger and more wonderful than he had ever imagined. That was the gift the humans had given him. The gift of possibility. The gift of hope. He hoped the galaxy was ready for them. But even if it was not, he knew they would adapt. They always did. That was what Deathworld species did. They survived. They grew. They reached for the stars. And they never ever gave up.